There we go.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everybody. My name's Haley Smith. I'm the president of the Northern Ontario Curling Association, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the 2024 annual general meeting of the Northern Ontario Curling Association. So this year marks the fourth time we are conducting our AGM using an online platform. And I would like our executive director, Laura Forget, to take a minute to explain how the meeting will proceed. So Laura, over to you.
Thanks, Haley. So while this is the fourth year that we're doing this virtually, it is the first year we're doing it on Teams. So bear with us as we try to figure out all the technical things. We couldn't quite figure out the live stream today. The recording will be posted to YouTube following the meeting. But general online housekeeping rules that we're all very familiar with by now. Keep your microphone muted, please, unless you've raised your hand or put something in the chat and been called upon. It just prevents the feedback and echoes from happening. If you could keep your camera turned off, it's not necessarily a huge deal, but for those who are speaking, it just reduces distraction. But definitely if you would like to share something, please turn your camera on. We'd love to see you. I will try to monitor the chat, but I'm also kind of doing all things tech, including launching polls and recording motions and things like that. So there will be designated moments throughout the meeting where you will be called upon to provide feedback, and then I will make sure that I'm watching the chat. If you have a request from the floor, you can raise your hand. If you would like to move or second a motion, there's a little react button. Looks like a happy face. If you click on that, you'll see a thumbs up. So send a thumbs up if you'd like to move or second a motion, and we'll make sure we get it recorded. And then to pass the motions, I'll be launching polls, which will appear in your chat. So make sure you know where that button is before we get started. You can open your chat. The polls will appear there. I'll leave them open for about 30 seconds to a minute, so you can choose one of two options, and then close the poll, and we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda. So I think that's it, unless anyone has any questions. I believe I've added the only two people who will need to share their screens are Candace and Jen, and I think I've added you both as presenters at this point. And then the last thing is for Jen's presentation, she's going to have a QR code that will pop up on the screen. So if your cell phone is not next to you at this moment, please take about 30 seconds and grab it. And she'll just have some questions and surveys that she's going to do using a QR code.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Yeah, for those of you that haven't done a survey using those QR codes, it's actually pretty slick. So hopefully everything will work fine, and everybody will get to experience it, because it is pretty neat. So at this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and request that a moment of silence be observed for those who have passed in the last year. So we'll just take a moment. Okay, thank you, everybody. So as a reminder, only club delegates are permitted to make a motion and to vote on any motions brought forward. NOCA board members will not vote unless they are also a club delegate. All reports and statements have been previously circulated to club delegates with the meeting package. And as Laura said earlier, this meeting is also being recorded and will be available for viewing later tonight on YouTube. And that is an effort to reach NOCA's broader curling community. A portion of the meeting will be in camera following the completion of the agenda in order for club delegates to raise any matters of concern or interest to the NOCA board and executive director. So at this time, I would like to introduce the NOCA board and staff. So as I said earlier, I'm Haley Smith. I'm the board president and the Region 1 director. Trevor Bono is our vice president, and he's a director at large. Jim Turner is our secretary treasurer. He's also a director at large. Rebecca Carr is our Region 2 director. Karen Saramaki is our Region 3 director. Dave Cutler is Region 4 director. Jeffrey King is Region 5 Director. Kim Meunier, Region 6 Director. And Amanda Gates is our 3rd Director at Large. And as she introduced herself earlier, Laura Forget is our Executive Director. I'd also like to introduce our guests this evening. We have Nolan Thiessen, CEO of Curling Canada, Jerry Sundwall, Chair of the Ontario Curling Council, Jennifer Ferris, Safe Sport and Education Officer for Curling Canada, and Candace Phillips from BDO Dunwoody. So Laura, can you please ensure a record is kept of the participants of this meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So we're on to constitution of meeting. Laura, can you please confirm that the notice of meeting was sent to all club delegates at least 21 days prior to the meeting as required by our constitution, and that the meeting is duly constituted?
Yes, notice was sent on June 3rd, 2024, at least 21 days prior, so this meeting is duly constituted.
Thank you. Report on credentials. Laura, can you please provide a report on the number of voting delegates present and confirm that we have quorum?
Yes, so quorum is 5 and we have 22 voting delegates present this evening.
Thank you. So we're on to approval of the agenda. The agenda was circulated prior to the meeting. Are there any requests for additional items to be added to the agenda, including new business? Hearing none, can a club delegate please make a motion that the agenda be accepted as distributed? Joanne? And I see Patty is a seconder. And you can use the poll, hopefully on your screen in a minute, to vote.
I just want to confirm that the first one is working. Is it working? Do we see a poll?
It is working.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, do we have the results? Has everybody had an opportunity to vote?
Okay. Yeah.
And is the motion carried?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So now we're going to move on to our speakers, and I would like to call on Nolan Thiessen to bring greetings from Curling Canada, please.
Hi, thanks everyone. Excited to be here tonight. I think we work quite a bit, and it's going to be an exciting year in Northern Ontario where we finally are going to get to have the Scotties Tournament of Hearts that we've been wanting for quite a while. It's we've been out there and we've had a site visit already, and the strength of the Scotties this year in Calgary, really showed, and we had a great kickoff from a ticket sales perspective, for Thunder Bay, and we're gonna get rolling again in the fall with even more marketing, and it's going to be really excited. It's going to be an amazing event, and just thanks for having us, and the Oilers.
Okay, thanks, Nolan. Next, I'd like to call on Jerry Sundwall, Chair for Ontario Curling Council, please.
Yes, thank you. I also would like to bring greetings from the Ontario Curling Council. It's been a really fun year working with NOCA and bringing all 3 organizations together in this one year, sharing some resources and building strengths between the organizations. Ontario Curling Council has had another great year, and we've shown some great growth. Our camps, both for the Northern Ontario and in Southern Ontario, have oversubscribed this year, which just shows we're doing some things right. The only sad part about my job this year is when I got back from holidays, I phoned Jen to catch up, and she said, I should tell you something first. I have a new job. So Jen has been, I've worked with her for the past 5 years, known her for longer than that. She has been a wonderful person for all of our organizations, and all of curling in Canada. Just wanted to say how much we are going to miss her, how much we respected her, and how much we appreciate that all that she's done. She may be working for Curling Canada, but we have her phone number. So if we need something, we'll be calling her. Thanks for asking for the meeting, me to speak at the meeting.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, we'll miss her as well, but we know that she's not gone far. So we will track her down if we need her. And
yes, we have Nolan's number.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to our keynote speaker, who happens to be Jen Ferris. So Jen, take it away.
Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I don't know how you're seeing my screen, but hopefully it's in full screen. Thanks everybody for the kind words, and I too will miss working with everybody. But the good news is I'm not far, and I will get to continue to support Northern Ontario and all the clubs in Ontario with my new role. And I'm here today to talk to you about what we can accomplish working together in the world of safe sport or sport safety. So just don't see this. Is my screen advancing? Did that advance?
Yeah, we can see a Menti QR code.
Okay, fabulous. So it looks a little different on my end, but that's fine. So here's the opportunity for a little bit of interaction. If you take a photo of that QR code or open a browser and go to menti.com and enter that number, we'll have a bit of an opportunity here from you also tonight. And this actually really does help me formulate some of our future planning. So if you please could take a minute and respond, that would be great. And what I'm going to do is hopefully this will start or launch. Can anybody confirm if you've got the app open? Yeah, there we go, it's working. So the question is, what does sport safety mean to you? Uh-oh. Did you lose that? No.
Oh, it's back now. We saw a beautiful
Okay.
sunset though for a second.
Yeah, something's wrong here. I've lost my. That's okay. We'll do it this way. You can see it though right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got 11 responses. I know there's at least 22 of you online. So some words here: responsibility, comfort, fun, healthy, inclusive, trust, protection, care, all good words. Oh, here's some more. Fabulous. Okay. When we're talking about sport safety actually encompasses quite a few concepts within sport. It's where we're trying to migrate the language to a little bit here. And we're talking about abuse and maltreatment prevention and complaint management, but also injury prevention, concussion awareness, return to play guidelines. And it's very closely related to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. You'll also hear me not really interchange, but probably use the term safe sport a little bit more frequently. And that's where we started this whole concept from, and it generally refers to abuse and maltreatment prevention and complaint management. So I don't want to scare you, but I do want to scare you. I want you to know that curling is not immune to this. We think that curling has all fabulous people, and that we're not going to be one of these shocking headlines. But the reality is, it has already happened within our sport. If you are on the board of directors at your club, I need you to ask the question, have you done everything you can to protect the safety of your participants, whether it's from physical injury, psychological abuse, maltreatment, it can happen in all sorts of forms. And so if you haven't started to think about this yet, my new job is to get you to start thinking about this and give you the tools and resources that you need to help get you to get your club ready. I want to talk to you briefly about the abuse-free sport program. This isn't something that you need to worry about necessarily at the club level, but this is something that Curling Canada lives with every day, and it's we're a signatory of an independent program that was designed by Sport Canada to prevent and investigate violations of Universal Code of Conduct to prevent and redress maltreatment in sport. That's a big phrase we use that we shorten to the UCCMS. And this organization will impose sanctions if needed, but it only applies to participants who have actually been deemed UCCMS participants by the program's signatory organization. So there's an office within this abuse-free sport program called the Office of the Sport Integrity Commission that actually processes all these complaints. It is mandatory that federally funded sport organizations participate in this program. And in curling, this program really only applies to about 225 people. And those, if a complaint were to come in about one of those 225 people, their complaint would actually be adjudicated by this program. Otherwise, it would go to Curling Canada's independent third party. So why do I tell you about this? This program has been running for about a year, a little bit more than a year now, and we're starting to get some statistics out of it that I wanted to share with you. So we know that the average complaint that comes in costs about $35,000 to protest, or sorry, to process. And the average length of investigation is approximately 183 days. So whether you're the victim or the person being accused of something, imagine your life being turned upside down for potentially the better part of a year or more. In just the 6-month window from November 2023 to March 2024, this program received 124 complaints, and only 47% of those were within the Office of the Sport Integrity Commission's jurisdiction, meaning it only applied to those UCCMS participants that were designated by primarily the national sport organization, their national sport organization. You could see on the left that the majority of complaints are actually involving psychological maltreatment. So these aren't necessarily things that you can see happening, but it is what the largest portion of complaints are focused on. When you look at who the complaints were against, 59% were still against coaches, 22% athletes, 8% administration and management. We have officials, referees, board members, and other volunteers in there as well. So while this has started as a coaching problem, it is not only a coaching problem. And when we look at where the helpline, so there is a toll-free national helpline that can receive complaints and provide advice to anybody who wants it. When they analyzed where the complaints were coming from, 51% of the complaints happened at the club level. Only 11% happened at the national level and the provincial level. So 22% altogether. So that's a staggering number, because the club level is the area of our sports system that is, I would argue, the least supported financially, with the human resources, expertise, and whatnot. And when you look at who is making the complaints, 51% of the people who called were witnesses. So our education of hear something, do something is starting to come to fruition there. So Curling Canada is under that federal umbrella, and right now they're the ones who have national mandates that they actually have to do something. Some provincial and territorial governments are starting to mandate safe sport actions. So things like independent third-party mechanisms for complaint management, mandatory policies, and whatnot. Curling Canada, Ontario has had requirements that there be mandatory policies in place, but they're not completely aligned with the new safe sport or the UCCMS. So right now, Ontario is still trying to figure themselves out. Right now, we don't think clubs will be mandated by a provincial government as you don't receive direct funding from them. But arguably, your clubs are where the greatest risk of an incident lies. Implementing safe sport at the club level would be a best practice, unless a member association made it a condition of membership, and that's nothing. That's not where we're headed quite yet. But we also know that the opportunities for system alignment are the best protection for all. So system alignment means the same rules at the national, provincial, territorial, and club levels for curlers. So if you go back to your Mentimeter, we have a few more questions for you. I'm going to start this one, and hopefully we'll start to see results coming in. I can't see anybody, so Laura, please interrupt me if I'm missing anything.
No, I just added the menti.com and the code to the chat as well. I know it's just at the top of the slide there, but it's pretty small. So if you missed the QR code, you can just grab the website and the code from the chat.
So on the left hand, a 1 would be we're not prepared at all. And number 5 would be we've got this figured out. See about 9 results in. There's a way for me to refresh it any faster. 12. Perfect. So this does not surprise me. Obviously, we have a little bit of work to do here. I'm going to advance to the next one. Same line of thought. How safe sport ready is your club? And I got to start it. Fabulous. So we've got about 18 results in here. Again, this one doesn't surprise me at all. A third-party process for managing complaints is expensive. We also know that clubs might not necessarily have the expertise to manage the media sensation that this could result in. And we know that budgets are very tight. We're struggling to keep the lights on and keep our equipment and our buildings open. And so safe sport is a line item that's quite easily cut often. But when the statistic of each complaint costing about 35,000, I don't think I think the numbers might be a little high, but they're not too far off. The complaints that I have seen are definitely over 15 to 20,000 when they do go through the full process. So these are some scary things. I've done a bit of research and work with the member associations on this topic, and I think what I'm seeing is some systemic gaps. So we have a lack of policies that are the same. I used the example of it's September. We have a curler from Manitoba who flies to Oakville, is playing a curler from Nova Scotia on sheet 7 of the Oakville Curling Club during a Stu Sells bonspiel, and an incident happens. Doesn't matter what the incident is. It's something. It's a violation of the UCCMS. Whose rules apply? The clubs aren't necessarily open yet for them to be a member of. They haven't paid their club membership dues yet. They're not national team program athletes. They aren't provincial athletes. The tours aren't sanctioned necessarily. There's a whole bunch of gaps here. We don't know whose rules they would fall to. We see an inconsistent adoption of what's called the reciprocation policy. So there's a policy out there that clubs are actually subject to, whereas if you were to sanction one of your members, let's say there was a case of fraud, and you sanction a member and you don't want them to be a member of any other curling club, you want to look out for your fellow curling clubs. We don't really even have a mechanism to publish that information yet. We have no centralized complaint intake or triage system. So if somebody wants to file a complaint, we don't know where to send them, or whose rules or whose system they follow. And not all organizations have an independent third party that's receiving their complaints. Or if a complaint actually or a sanction actually gets published, issued, how do we publish that so that the next club doesn't, accept the junior curling coach into their program, right? We also see a bit of a hot potato approach with jurisdictions. It's expensive, takes lots of time, lots of resources. So nobody really wants to take ownership for some of these complaints. And as a result, people end up filtering through the system, perhaps with a lack of consequences. There is a bit of a lack of a formalized connection between Curling Canada, the member associations, the clubs, and the individuals. So is a member of a rental league under the umbrella of the club? Are they under the umbrella of the member association? If there's a safe sport complaint, who looks after them? And there are multiple stakeholders at play here. We've got Sport Canada, we've got provincial territorial governments, we've got third-party companies. We also know that prevention through education is key to avoiding a safe sport complaint in the first place. But it's really time consuming to make sure that everybody has signed every consent form and every waiver and made sure that everybody's had sufficient education. We know that it takes a lot of time and energy and technological resources. We know that there's capacity issues both at the MA levels and the club levels. And we also know that clubs and our boards, they need education on their roles and responsibilities for safe sport. Sorry, I'm just conscious of the time here. So I just wanted you to know that we're looking forward to simplifying this process for you. So we know that your clubs can really get started with sport safety through kind of a four-step process, one being policies and procedures, one of prevention through education, operationalizing safe sport, and then response. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but policies are your best friend. You'll get into trouble if you don't have policies, or if your policies are incomplete or vague, or they contradict each other. If you set out rules and then you choose not to follow them, or if you have policies that don't fit with your culture or your resources, and if you fail to update them. So really well-written policies provide you with guidance in the case of a crisis or problem. And in the event that you can't avoid the problem or the crisis, they help you act consistently. We know that if our policies were common or similar, the shared participants in the system will find the whole experience easier. Curling Canada and the OCC and NOCA, we've hung our hat on prevention through education for a long time. We want everybody to understand what constitutes a safe sport issue. We want people to intervene, and we want to make sure that the adults in the system are protecting others. This is not just a minor issue, and it's not just a coach issue. It crosses with other societal issues such as diversity, equity, and inclusion. And board members really need to understand your roles and responsibilities as you're governing your clubs as it comes to sport safety. Then we actually want you to walk the walk and talk the talk. We want you to follow your policies, mandate education, follow up on people, do what's right, not what's easy. I think I heard Ann Merklinger once say in a talk I was with her, she said, nothing can ever be in the too hard pile. You have to be able to do this. We want you to make sure you keep an eye on safe sport when you're implementing all programs and competitions. So, for example, make sure you have a male and a female out with the little rockers. That's a pretty simple thing that you could do, right? You want to budget for safe sport, and I usually recommend making it a responsibility of a board member, like a role, like a safe sport officer or whatnot within your organization. And then the third party response is ideal. It's the gold standard, but it's really, really hard and it's very expensive. So there are other ways to accomplish this. And this is something that it's a struggle at the provincial territorial level as well. So this is what NOCA and Curling Canada are hoping to help you with in the future. So one last Minty question to take us on our way here. I just want to know, what can NOCA or Curling Canada do to help your club get started with a sport safety implementation? Whoops. So this is fabulous. I don't know if there's a way I can scroll down here. I think you can scroll down on your end, but what I'll do is I'll export the results here and I will share them back with Laura for your minutes. But here's what I want you to know that we're working on. Right now, Curling Canada and NOCA, along with some other member associations, are working on creating a sport safety plan and the applicable resources that will contribute to an NSO, PTSO, and club alignment with a safe sport lens. So we're looking at creating this summer an aligned policy suite, including potentially a national code of conduct. If we all played by the same rules, it would make sense. A centralized complaint intake, these are all up for consideration. They're not necessarily guaranteed. Educational tools for the club for club boards, such as sport safety responsibilities and diversity, equity, and inclusion training, sanctions reporting system, simplified communication tools, checklists, websites, posters, injury reporting. We're going to develop a business model to help support the program, and we're going to leverage technology to help with some more automation to help build capacity within the systems. So I'm sorry, I think I went over my 10-15 minutes, but I just want you to know that I am here. Should you have any questions, please reach out. I'm usually best reached by email, but Laura also knows how to get a hold of me, and always happy to talk safe sport or any education with you.
Okay, thanks, Jen. It's a very important topic, and it seems to be more prevalent as we continue on into the future. So good to get us thinking about safe sport and policies and education, because I think definitely we can all use it. So thank you very much for your time this evening. And again, for the folks on this meeting, please feel free to reach out to Jennifer if you have any questions or ideas that perhaps could be taken into consideration as she's working to develop some of this stuff. So thank you again. So we're at the point of the meeting where we are looking at the adoption of the minutes from the annual general meeting of last year on June 27th. Those minutes were circulated with the meeting package. So would somebody care to move to accept the minutes of the AGM of June 27th, 2023 as distributed? I see Dave Cutler. And a seconder, please. Kelly? Kelly B? Are there any dissenters to that motion?
I'll just launch the poll. Just hang on one second.
Okay. Oh, right. You're launching the poll. I keep
I am
forgetting
launching
about the
my poll.
poll. Hopefully everybody can see it.
Got 7 responses so far.
Oh,
Some people are saying they're unable to submit. I'm not sure
Yeah.
why.
I know when it pops up on my screen, it says view, but it's only up there for a very short period of time and then it disappears.
Shane suggested that if you close your chat and reopen it, it might work, but I've got 11 responses so far.
Okay.
Other people are raising their hands, so I feel like yeah, so I think it might depend on what version of Teams people are using too.
Oh, that could
Some
be as
people.
well.
So what we can do is just have a show of hands if you want, because I can see how many people are raising their hands as well. So
So all in favor of accepting the
raise your
motion?
hand.
Raise your hand.
It would be old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
We've got 15 or 16 raised
Yeah,
hands.
16
So,
people with raised hands.
yeah. So I'd say
Okay.
that's
Perfect. So that motion is carried. Thank you. We do not have any business arising from the minutes. So we will move to the finances. And at this point, I'd like to call on Candace Phillips from BDO Dunwoody to present the auditor's report for the past year. So Candace, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here again. Another year has gone by. I can't believe how quickly it has gone already. So we're just going to get into the statements here and sort of jump right into our independent practitioners review engagement report. There's no significant changes this year to the layout or sort of what's included in here. So we can see that it starts off in saying that we are here to report on the statement of financial position as of April 30th, 2024, as well as the statement of operations, changes in the net assets and cash flows for that year ended as well. It does go over, of course, management's responsibilities for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, and then our responsibility as the independent practitioner to be able to follow our standards that are set by our governing boards, and that we, of course, are doing this independent of the organization. And then, of course, the piece that everyone's always interested in is the overall conclusion for the year. And we can see that we actually have ahead of this our basis for our qualified conclusion. And this just highlights here, like many nonprofits, if there's been sort of any revenue that's been derived from fundraising or donations, and there's sort of a cash basis to it, we're not able to gain satisfactory evidence to the completeness of that revenue. So this is a very common qualification that many not-for-profits do deal with. So it's not anything sort of alarming or anything that we'd be significantly concerned with. And if anything, it might actually disappear for next year, says there's no more lottery revenue coming into the organization. any longer. So at the end of it, there is a qualified conclusion. So this is basically our gold star opinion with sort of a little asterisk just over the completeness of that revenue there. And it basically says that it is materially not misstated and that the financial statements have been prepared in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So then, of course, another piece that most people want to get right into is the nitty gritty of the numbers here. So we always start off with sort of our snapshot, our picture of sort of everything as of April 30th. And then we can see here at April 30th, there was a cash of $131,692. We've got both short-term investments as well as long-term investments, and these are GICs that are held by the organization. And we can see that there's a little bit of a shift here between what's considered short-term and what's considered long-term. Overall, though, the investments, the GICs, come to about $214,000 at year end, while last year it was about $175,000. So there's been an increase of almost $40,000 input to the GICs, which is great to see, especially when the interest rates are so good now when they have driven up the prime rate the past couple years here. So it's best to get the money invested, make some of that investment income while you can. So the difference here just in the allocation between short-term and long-term is just the GICs that are going to mature within the next year of before April 30th, 2025, and anything that's going to mature outside of that time period. And then we are moving on to the next piece here of accounts receivable at year end. And this mainly consists of the amounts due from the curling clubs and amounts that are due for any of the membership dues that are still outstanding as of April 30th. So at that time, there was $25,845 due to NOCA for these amounts. And then sort of wrapping up on the asset side of everything, we've got a little bit of that equipment here. And that's just the amounts that have been recorded over the years for things like curling sets, ice equipment, timekeeping equipment, and such. And that's down to $11,280. There were no capital additions this year, so we're just seeing the wear and tear and, getting the use out of those equipment being used for the year. So overall, there were assets totaling $383,000 at year end. And then, of course, on the flip side, we have our liabilities and net assets. For the liability side here, we can see that we've got accounts payable of $40,867, which is up from last year's balance. And that's mostly due to a repayable due to the Ontario Trillium Foundation for $23,000 that was not spent and was going to be returned to them. And of course, accounts payable and accrued liabilities is always going to shift year to year, depending on sort of what purchases are made around year end and any other sort of balances there as well. And the same holds true for the government remittances payable. These are amounts that are due to the government, and in this case it'd be due to sort of the federal government levels, because the majority of this is related to HST payable, and there's some old amounts there that will be sort of repaid over the next year or so. So we'll start seeing this balance start coming down. So there was $23,345, just up from last year's $14,000. And then we can see deferred revenue came down to zero this year, and that's just because last year it included the Ontario Trillium Foundation funds that were there at year end and then spent during this past year. And the last little tiny bit for liabilities is just this old deferred capital contributions amount. And this is just related to some ice equipment that was purchased years ago with Trillium Foundation funds. And the dollars for that are just recognized over the useful life of that ice equipment. So overall, there was total liabilities of $65,918, which of course is covered more than enough by the current cash assets, which would be $259,000, which is a positive indicator that we look forward to see. And then the last piece we've got here is just the net assets for the organization, which is just the accumulation of all the surpluses and deficits that the organization has incurred since its inception. And we can see that internally restricted net assets were $78,757 at year end. And this is just amounts that have been set aside by the board to be used for specific purposes. So of course, this is something that the board can revisit each year and update as needed. And then unrestricted funds remaining are just any of those that can be used for any purposes as needed. So then moving on from sort of looking at everything from April 30th and how it was at that point, we move on to the statement of operations and take a look to see what the activity was for the year. So we can see that revenue for the year totaled $217,454. And we can see that the breakdown of that was the operating grant of $33,000 that comes in from the Ontario Curling Council. We can see that Ontario Trillium Foundation, that community building fund, that was the last bit of that deferred revenue that was actually spent during the year, was $34,347. Competitions was down a little bit this year to $40,364. The deferred capital contributions, the very tiny $427, just ties into that old amount for the ice equipment. We can see the lottery revenue just sort of wrapped up at the very beginning of this fiscal year. So there was just $1,300. Membership dues were up just a little bit from the previous year at $88,000. And miscellaneous income that just comes in from the various sources was just under $20,000 for the year. And then we can see for the expenses, we had total expenses for the year of $231,650. And the breakdown of this we've got in here is like sort of the administrative support, sort of like the bookkeeping and all of that for $7,575. We've got competitions, which of course we would expect to come down as there was less revenue for the year. So competition expenses were $43,666. Contracted services also came down just as this sort of shift in sort of how things were being operated. So that was down to $3,750. Inventory write down, we can see there was no inventory on the book. So we're not going to see inventory write down again. And then we can see the last little bit of the lottery profit share and payout was down to just under $2,400. Meetings and travel were down to $15,744, down from last year's $22,000, which of course this is just going to change depending on sort of what traveling is being done or is required and sort of who's going to be covering what costs and when. We can see the association fees were $22,722. Personnel, which is just any of the sort of wages and benefits, that came to $83,420 for the entire year. And professional fees, which that's a mixture of the accounting fees for us ourselves at BDO, as well as any legal fees that were paid, that came to a total of $15,450. Well, programming costs such as, the youth curling and such came to about $18,704. So with the total, where we take the revenue less the expenses, we get a deficiency of revenue over expenses for the year of $14,196. But if we do back out the amortization expense, which is a non-cash item, so that $2,900 gets backed out, that leaves the organization with more of a cash deficit of $11,296, which is down from last year's $58,000. For this one, that's basically all of the main operations get summed up in these 2 pages, and the rest of the financial statements do include just more detail on sort of how the cash balance changed, how the net asset balance changed as well, and a bunch of notes there. So if you're ever needing to, I always joke saying, like, if you ever need to get some shut-eye instead of counting sheep, you might want to, read some financial statement notes and get into the numbers there. But otherwise, that is the financial statements for the organization for this past fiscal year. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me, or if you've got something even after the point, you can reach out to Laura and she can get you in touch with me as well.
Okay, I don't see any hands up. Laura, do you? There's something in the chat.
Clarification.
The ice equipment. I would love to share more, but this is before my time, so I'm gonna need to lean on somebody.
Yeah, even for the details, this is ice equipment from many years ago now. I'm not sure. I wouldn't know from like our standpoint. I don't know if it's actually shared by the member clubs or just at the competitions.
Yeah, if it's old stuff, it might be old timing equipment, like stuff that was used at competitions that was just coated as ice. It's definitely not something new.
No, I can definitely get a more specific response from Leslie if that is needed, wanted. I can reach out to her, and she, unless Karen is on the call and might have some knowledge too, I'm not sure.
No, I don't.
Okay, Leslie's our last resort.
Leslie's our
So
last resort.
I will email Leslie, Shane, and get back to you.
Okay, if there are no other questions for Candace, thank you very much, Candace. Appreciate all your work with our financials every year. I know it's a big job, so thank you so much. Would somebody care to move to accept the draft financial statements for the year ending April 30th, 2024 as presented? Okay, whose hand went up first?
So I saw Ron Silver.
I saw Ron's, yeah. And Karen?
Karen. Okay.
Seconded by Karen.
And now everybody can put their hand up.
Yes, and we'll do the old-fashioned way. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Okay.
18 or so.
So that motion is carried. We have majority.
Now we'll just get everyone to put their hands back down because we have 2 more motions to go through. So it'll just make it a little cleaner and easier if everyone lowers their hand, and then we'll start over.
Okay, the next motion is, would somebody please make a motion that an accounting review for 2024-25 be conducted? I see Dave Cutler and Ken Kopaczenski. Mover and seconder. And all those in favor, please raise your hands. That motion is carried. I counted 20 hands up. And the last one to do with the financial piece, would somebody care to make a motion that BDO Dunwoody LLP Thunder Bay be named as the auditor for the 2024-25 financial audit? Karen Saramaki and Steve Menier, mover and seconder. All those in favor, please raise your hands. We have 19 that I counted. That motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. And thanks again, Candace. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Everyone have a great summer and another great curling season, and we'll check again in another year.
Thank you. You
Thanks,
enjoy your
Candace.
summer as well. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, moving on to board and staff reports. The reports were shared earlier with you as part of your meeting package. My report was very short. But if anybody does have any questions, please feel free to ask. I do want to say that it was a good year. We had some great discussions over the year. And I think that what we've found is that personalizing the conversations more at our spring and fall meetings has been very, very helpful. We've had some of our clubs sharing success stories and sharing some things that they've tried to grow the sport in their clubs. And I think that if we move to more of that kind of format for our spring and fall meetings, it's helpful for all of our member clubs to see what everybody else is doing and to make those connections with other clubs within the NOCA territory. So if you haven't participated in the NOCA fall or spring meetings, I strongly encourage you to send a representative to participate if your club delegate can't be the one, because there is some great information shared. And given some of the things that Curling Canada is working on and that Laura's working on in conjunction with Ontario Curling Council, Curl On, and Curling Canada, I think there's going to be some exciting information to be shared with our member clubs going forward. So I'm looking forward to next year. So thank you, everybody. We'll move on to Laura.
Okay, thank you. My report was a little bit longer than Haley's, but I will not read the entire thing. I first would like to thank everyone for your patience this year because I was doing everything for the first time. And as many of you know, that's sometimes not easy. So there was a lot of learning this year from my position, but I also want to acknowledge as clubs that this was the third year that you've had a new executive director. And so a third year in a row that somebody has maybe been saying to you, I'm doing everything for the first time. Thank you for your patience. And so I hope that next year we can advance some of these projects a little more quickly. I was really happy with some of the things that we got accomplished this year. So I'll just highlight a few of those things. And some of those things, unfortunately, aren't necessarily public-facing things that the clubs would notice right away. But they did do a lot to build a stronger foundation for the organization as a whole. So the first was a financial restructuring. So we not only changed bookkeepers, so we hired Terry Collicott, who's actually the bookkeeper for Curl On and for OCC. And that was huge for us because she understands the rhythm of a curling season, how things like Curling IO work. So she had much more background knowledge of how to operate the finances of a curling organization. And that was hugely helpful for us. But in addition to that, we also switched banks. We switched financial programs. So we moved to QuickBooks and we changed our financial policies and approval processes. So all of that gave us a lot more visibility with our finances and made it a lot easier to track where things were going. It took a lot of time, but I think it will set us up well going forward. And as many of you know, we also moved to a digital membership and data collection form. We're moving away from the mail, put a stamp on an envelope and stick it in the mail. And this is to help us with data-driven decision-making. So you'll see that this is not only a key priority for us moving forward, but also for Curling Canada. So there'll be a national survey coming out in September. We encourage all of you to do your best to complete that survey as well, because it really helps all of us on the admin side to make decisions and create programs that are beneficial to you. Membership was up just a little bit this year, and we hope to see that continue to grow post-pandemic. We also welcomed 2 clubs back to the organization this past season, the Nosbonsing Curling Club, which is just down the road from me in Astorville, and the Mindamoya Curling Club on Manitoulin Island. And as you all heard from Jen Ferris, Safe Sport and policy review was big for our organization this year as well. So we, alongside Ontario Curling Council and Curl On, rewrote all of our Safe Sport policies and also are now paying a third party, as Jen mentioned, to manage all of our complaints. So this allows for an impartial handling of sensitive matters and maintains confidentiality and fairness anytime there is an issue of misconduct. Moving on to competitions. So we did, despite the numbers on the financials. That was due in large part to some large sponsorships that came last year that we didn't re-sign this year. But we did see continued growth in registrations across most of our events post-pandemic. Of note, particularly was U18. We saw 16 teams at our U18 provincial, which was really encouraging and awesome to see, and just shows the growth of curling in Northern Ontario. And we're so excited to see that Amethyst Curling Camp as well as has a wait list and is very full this year. So I'll be looking forward to seeing all of them on the ice in a couple of weeks as well. Again, this season, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to Karen Saramaki. I would not be able to do all of the things that I do without her help. She is invaluable to this organization and has done a ton of work this year. And I'd also like to acknowledge the host clubs and the volunteers. We also couldn't run our events without you and all of the committees, the officials, and the people who welcome our athletes. We are greatly appreciative of you. And a highlight this year was our very first two-person stick provincial championship, which was held at the Fort William Curling Club. There were 5 teams signed up and they played a single round robin, but we are looking forward to growing this event in the years to come. As many of you probably know, if you listen to any curling podcast, stick curling is growing at an exponential rate across the country. And we hope that your clubs will consider, if you haven't already, starting a dedicated stick league for all of those curlers. I listed in my report a list of all of our provincial champions this year. They all represented us incredibly well, both on and off the ice. Time and again, we hear stories of how our athletes not only carry themselves on the ice, and we see it on TV at some of the bigger events, but also how they interact with the fans off the ice. We're always very proud of them. And I also just want to mention our own, of course, EJ Harnden and Tracy Fleury from teams Gushu and Homan, who had a ton of success this year, and it was just announced that they'll represent us at the Pan Continental in the fall. So quickly, just looking ahead to next year, now that I've had a year under my belt to figure out where we're going and how we're going to get there. We've got a few priorities, which include enhancing our member engagement with you, the clubs. As Haley said, it's become very clear that those one-on-one meetings that we've had with many of you this year were extremely beneficial. We learned a lot, and I think vice versa, and also allowing more opportunity for you to share with each other, as we've seen at our spring and fall meetings. We're going to continue to improve organizational efficiencies, and we've got a few projects hopefully on the go that will help us with that, and continuing to strengthen our partnerships with the broader curling community, and that will be highlighted at some of the big national championships, not just the Scotties being held here next year. So we've obviously got the Scotties. I'm sure many of you will be there live and in person this year because we couldn't last time Thunder Bay hosted. In addition, though, we are also hosting the 2025 Canadian Masters in Sault Ste. Marie, as well as U15 Rockfest East will be hosted in North Bay. So we're very excited to partner with our national and provincial curling bodies and those curling clubs to get out in the community and do lots of outreach to help grow the sport, not only in those communities, but across the country. We are also looking to recruit some new officials. There have been changes made to officiating courses. Jen, I know, is going to be part of this as well. And we're hoping to recruit new people to this area of the sport as well. Of course, we're always looking to grow membership and engagement with those members. Our Noka Notes will be coming back in September with a new theme that we are all Team Northern Ontario, and we would love to share your stories, not just the stories of our athletes, but we want to hear your stories. Curling, we all know, is a very special sport in a lot of ways, and the stories are what make it so. So if you have stories that you think would be interesting or exciting to share in one of our first issues, please reach out. And of course, youth. So we've seen growth already in youth curling in Northern Ontario, but I know there's a lot more work to be done. So we've already started a small committee, I guess. I don't know if I want to call it a committee, a group of people. They're mostly youth coordinators in their curling clubs to help grow our programs like Hit, Draw, Tap, the Singles app, U15 Rockfest, and we're looking to partner with the Ontario Curling Council to host a few development camps for the U15 age group in Northern Ontario this year as well. So again, thank you all. And I also want to thank our board because they've been a huge support to me as I kind of navigate everything and continue to learn this job and learn this side of the sport. I am looking forward to working with all of you next season, and I'm very excited about some of the things that we've got coming down the pipeline. So thank you. And I'm going to toss it over to Jen Ferris, I believe.
Thanks, everybody. Now I have my interim manager of programs operations hat on for the Ontario Curling Council, and I'll deliver my last AGM report for you. You'll recall that the OCC is the recognized provincial sport organization who serves in a coordinating role between our two members, Curlon and NOCA. And we are the developmental arm of both organizations. We're responsible for coach, athlete, ice technician, and officials program. And jointly, we have a shared mission, vision, values, and strategic plan for curling in Ontario. We have our own boards of directors, of which NOCA elects 2 representatives to. And I want to take this time to thank Julie Syme, whose multiple year term ended, and I think she was on with us for at least 3 years, and Dave Cutler. Both of you, thank you so much for your leadership and your contribution to the OCC board. And we welcome Kim Menier to the board for this upcoming season, who will join Dave and on the OCC's board. We also want to thank Laura Forget and the NOCA board for your collaboration in the province-wide initiatives and shared services. Please know that you are all very well represented nationally and continue to be recognized as a leading member association in all that you do. We want to thank the OCC wants to thank NOCA host clubs and volunteers as well. We can't run any of our programs or competitions without you putting your hand up and accepting our events. So thank you so much for doing that. A few highlights from the OCC season. It was a banner year for coach and ice technician programming. We hosted over 29 NCCP workshops throughout the province, 6 of them within the NOCA region, and we trained over 300 coaches on NCCP training. We had 7 ice tech courses within the province and trained nearly 100 ice technicians, with our largest course being in North Bay. We'll host another one there in a week or so, and I think Tom Leonard's on this call, and I think he's one of our instructors at the course in North Bay. Our high performance program was able to support multiple Northern Ontario teams within our next gen program. Team Toner was a part of our flagship OPSI program as a U20 women's team. Team Rajala, a U20 men's team, and Team Dubinsky, a U20 women's team. Our Quest for Gold program also provided direct-to-athlete support for the winners of the U18 and U20, and would have supported your wheelchair group had they been able to form their team, but unfortunately that didn't happen. Last summer, you've heard it before, we had a rebound from COVID where we operated Amethyst with 60 athletes, and we had nearly a 100% Northern Ontario coaching staff. We are pleased to announce that has grown to 80 athletes for this year. I think other than Sean, who is employed by us, I think it's all Northern Ontario coaching staff this year, and we're waitlisted. So that camp starts in the next 2 weeks, and we're pretty excited for that. We flew over 100 people into Thunder Bay for the Ontario Winter Games, and the Fort William Curling Club were fabulous hosts. We want to thank them for having us there for 4 days for the Ontario Winter Games. And we continue to make the National Sport Trust Fund available to member clubs of NOCA for charitable tax receipting fundraising purposes. We've got lots of Northern clubs utilizing that program. Internally, we're working with our curling partners, Curling Canada, Curlon, and NOCA on some shared services, including the aligned financial systems and employee benefits. We conducted a full policy review and are still working on some of that. And we voluntarily implemented an independent third-party complaint system, and we'll continue to work on that alignment. Our audit, unfortunately, has been delayed for reasons we weren't prepared for, our auditor had to withdraw their services, and so we found a new auditor, but our AGM is going to happen in early September. We remain in a strong financial position, but we will post a small loss this year due to repayment of a COVID loan that we were deemed ineligible to retain the 25% loan forgiveness, basically. And I just wanted to highlight the OCC will look a little different going forward. Obviously, I'm moving on to Carolyn Canada, but also Andrea Ronnebeck, our education manager from Kenora, who served as the NOCA's technical coordinator, and then she's transitioned to our education manager. Between the two organizations, she worked for us for 9 years. She's retiring, and so we thank Andrea for her service. And we want to congratulate her on her retirement. So thanks, everybody. And thanks for letting me present here tonight.
Just before Haley jumps back in, I personally want to thank Jen because Jen hired me back when I started both with OCC and NOCA and was an incredible role model for me and welcomed me with open arms to curling and working in curling. And she's not going anywhere because I still call her all the time. So, but we will miss her at OCC, and I'm excited to work with her new hat, shirt, whatever you're wearing now with Curling Canada. So thank you for everything you've done for NOCA, and I know that now you just get to do more for us with Curling Canada.
Once a Northerner, always a Northerner, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks to both Jen and Laura for your reports. Are there any questions about either of these reports before we move to accept? Seeing any hands up? Okay. Can somebody please entertain a motion to oh, sorry. Who was that?
Steve, are you
Steve?
asking a question, or are you the first to motion? You put it back down.
Let's back up.
I was just going to make a motion.
There you go. He's quick on the button.
Okay, so yeah,
I'm paying
you're
attention.
just a step ahead of me, Steve.
Sorry.
Okay, Steve is moving to accept the reports of the board of directors and staff for 2023 or 2023-24 as presented and distributed. So seconder for that motion, please.
Ron Silver had his hand up.
Ron
as well.
Silver. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, 19, that motion is carried. All right, moving on to acts of directors. Could somebody please make a motion to ratify the actions of the NOCA Board of Directors for the 2024-25 fiscal year? Kelly moved, and seconder Kim Menier. All those in favor, please raise your hands. That motion is carried. So under new business, we would like to take this opportunity to announce the winners of our volunteer awards for the 2023-24 curling season. Coach awards were presented to Lee Toner from Northern Credit Union Community Center and Steve Menier from the McIntyre Curling Club. You can see
I'm just sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lee will be with us at Amethyst Curling Camp as a coach in 2 weeks from now. And Steve is on this call as well. So all of the award winners know that they've won these awards, but it's a surprise to everybody else. So congratulations, both very well deserved.
And for ice technicians, we have Bruno Bin from the North Bay Granite Club.
I personally get to curl on Bruno's ice every week, and I can attest that it is some of the best in the province. So Bruno's worked a lot with Tom Leonard, actually, who's on this call, and he's been invited to some national events recently and worked at our provincial last year as well. So this is summer ice, though, that he's working on in this photo. You can see from his shorts and the.
And I can tell you his summer ice is fabulous too. So kudos to him for being able to make really good curling ice when it's very hot outside.
Yeah, he'll be starting anytime. Actually, our summer skills just over a week away.
Our volunteer awards, we have Kelly Latosky from Port Arthur Curling Center, Joe Cooper from Little Current Curling Club, Kelly Irvine from Northern Credit Union Curling Center. So congratulations to those three.
All work very hard in the curling community. I know I've had interactions with all of them in the last year multiple times, and they're doing many incredible things for curling, both in their communities and in the surrounding communities.
And then last but not least, one of the new awards that we presented for the first time last year is our Leslie Kerr Builder Award. And this year's winner was Tricia Sampson from the Fort William Curling Club. Very well deserved. She works very hard.
Tricia actually was one of the two inaugural winners of the two-person stick provincial as well, and represented us at the Canadian two-person stick in Toronto this year.
So congratulations to all our award winners. And it's never too early to start thinking about somebody you may want to nominate for next year. And we'll be asking for nominations later in the curling season. But yeah, we're always excited to get nominations for the various categories. So if you think of somebody who's deserving, please take some time to nominate them, because it's we like recognizing those that work so hard in the curling community and in the NOCA territory. So congratulations again to everybody.
So keep an eye on our social media in the coming weeks, because we'll be sharing a little bit about each of these recipients and congratulating them on social media as well, so you can share far and wide with your networks as well.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to end the formal part of the AGM, and we'll continue the remainder of the meeting with our club delegates and the NOCA board. So if you're a club delegate, stay on the line, and